How you guys doing? This is Derek with Woodworking. In this video, I'm going to kind of show you some of the hinges that we use. These are the 4 main hinges that we use on pretty much everything. And they all kind of have a different purpose depending on where the cabinet is, what it's up against, and also what the customer is looking for. So let's start out with one of my favorite hinges. This right here. Also, there's like a million more hinges available. These are all Blum hinges. So that is 100% of the hinges that I use is all from Blum. So this right here is, I believe it's called a straight shank. I believe it's a 110 degree opening. This hinge right here. It's a pretty popular hinge. There's a lot of places online that'll sell that. And another thing to note, all of these hinges are the same size hole, which is, I believe it's like, oh man, I forget what it is now. I'll throw it in the description, the size hole, but a lot of these hinges are all the same hole size. So let's jump right to this. Now, this hinge can be paired with a bunch of different kinds of plates. This specific plate is the one that I use mostly. That plate right there. Now, it clips right in as I throw it on the table. It clips in. Now, one of my favorite things about it is the fact that it clips together. That means if you're installing a kitchen and you want to make sure that the 2 cabinets next to each other are perfect and then you screw them in, you can pop the doors off easily, quickly, screw them together, and then you can pop the doors back on. That is one of my favorite things to do, and that's one of the reasons why I love this hinge. Now, with this plate and this hinge combination, this gives you about 1/2 inch overlay. Now, I will show you, this right here is already rigged up with those hinges right there. You can see the inside. Now, this right here mimics the face frame. This mimics the door. So, it opens up. Now, your 1/2 inch overlay is going to be that right there. You can see this is the face frame, and you can see the distance between there is 1/2 inch. Now that shows you the 1/2 inch overlay. If your cabinet was here, and then you open the door that way, obviously you'd have a full door here. This is just one rail piece. Opens up, and then that's the inside. Now, I will make a video in the future on how to adjust all these hinges. I'm not going to go into depth in this because you won't really be able to see the adjustments. I can just point out the adjustment screws. This first screw here, it's this screw right here, is going to move it in and out this way. This screw here, which is the back one, is going to move it that way and that way. And also, what's cool about them, all these are soft close. What's cool about these, actually no, these ones aren't soft close, but we'll get to that. But you can turn the soft close on and off by this little gray switch right here. If you can see that. Now, obviously you'd be like, why would you like to turn that off? Obviously, soft close is a nice feature. If you have a small door that's like 8 inches wide, something like that, 2 soft close hinges sometimes makes it close incredibly slow. You're literally sitting there for like a minute waiting for it to slowly shut. Now, what you can do is you can shut off one, and then you force it closed, you close it. You can hear that little click, and then you open it, and now that soft close, you can see the soft close is sticking out here, and then now this one down here is tucked in. Now it's held in. So you close it. It's probably not going to work too well because it's such a small piece. But now it's only operating off one hinge. One hinge is soft close. Turn it back on. It's as easy as just open it up. You turn it on and it springs back up, and now you have both of them. So if you have a door like that that's really small, that's closing incredibly slow, I would just try that. Try shutting one off. You know, maybe leave the top hinge on, or vice versa. You know, just play with it, see what you can come up with. But these are some of my favorite right here. You can pop the door off. Now you have the door, and then on your face frame, your plates are already mounted. You know, and then pop your door back on, and you're good to go. That's one of the reasons why I love these 1/2 inch overlay hinges from Blum. Now, they're not necessarily called 1/2 inch overlay hinges. They're just like a straight shank or something like that. I'll find somewhere online. I'll try to find somewhere online that offers all 4 of these, and I'll try to tag all 4 of those in the description if I can find them all. So those are what I refer to as 1/2 inch overlay. And the screws that I use to fasten those, we'll hit on screws in a few. Let's go over these. So these two are very similar looking. Super similar. The differences is this one right here is 1.5 inch overlay, which would be considered full overlay. This one right here is 1.25 inch overlay. Now, all of my face frames are 1.75 inch. Let me get rid of this. All of my face frames are 1.75 inch. So 1.5 inch overlay would leave 1/4 inch of the face frame seen, exposed. Now, if you have 2 cabinets next to each other with both full overlay, that would give you 1/2 inch, 1/4 inch on each face frame. Usually, that's enough for the swing. Now, I've had scenarios where one door had to be tweaked a bunch one way, the other door had to be tweaked towards it, and they were touching. You just have to kind of adjust to get it to where they're not touching. But you should be fine with doing full overlay, you know, one after another. So, 1.5 inch overlay. I will say, so this is meant specifically for a 3/4 face frame. I'll try to show you there. They have like little teeth on it that's meant to kind of clip right onto a 3/4 face frame. Now, our face frames are all 3/4 or 13/16. So they're 1/16 bigger than that 3/4 face frame that they recommend. So we end up having to tap these on there a little bit. It's nice because it holds it snug. And then you can put your screw in. The downside is it kind of mars up the front of the cabinet a little bit. Now, we usually put them on. They don't need to be moved, so it's not a huge deal. But that is one thing to be aware of. So that these are 1.5 inch overlay, aka full overlay. These are 1.25 inch overlay. Now, I would recommend in a situation where you have a cabinet that's butting up against, say, I'm trying to think of a scenario here. Maybe it's a base cabinet, and next to that base cabinet is a stove. It's not a wall, it's just a stove. A scenario like that, I don't think I would recommend going full overlay. It's kind of tough because your door might not open fully. If it opens fully, it might only open straight. It might not give you that extra bend open where if you have, you know, pullouts or something in there, you wouldn't have enough room. So I would recommend doing an 1.25 inch overlay. It gives you that little bit of added room. It still isn't exposing a ton of the face frame. You're still kind of hiding it, but it just gives you that little extra room. And also you don't have to stress about like, oh no, am I going to be able to open the door? Maybe not, who knows? So that's when to use these. I didn't touch on it, but these 1/2 inch overlays are what I use even when I'm using full overlay. These are what I would use for a cabinet that is up against a wall. You just kind of need to, you know, you need that extra room to be able to open that door. Mainly when it's up against a wall. If you have a, 24 depth cabinet here that's like for a fridge, and then you have a 12 depth going into it that's still kind of up against a wall, you'd have to use it there. I tend to use them anywhere where there's going to be an obstruction that could stop my door from opening, or opening fully. That's where I'd mainly use these. I just did a job the other day where we did a hamper unit. It was a giant unit, and I did 1/2 inch overlay because we were up against the wall. But I'm glad I did, because another thing that I hadn't thought of is they had, I want to say it was like 8 inch baseboard. So it actually came up and butted into the face frame of my cabinet. I'm really glad I did 1/2 inch overlay, because after 1/2 inch, you now have 1.25 inch of your face frame that's seen. And that was 3/4 inch baseboard that was butting in. So I was saved by that, but I would use that up against the wall anyways. So that's those. This is obviously, we did full overlay, 1.25 inch overlay. These are kind of a unique one, and these, like I said, aren't soft close. They kind of snap closed. So these hinges right here are huge. They're kind of funky looking. These are what I would use for a Susan cabinet. Now, just about all of our Susans are made so that there's two doors. One opens first. The second door has a larger stile on it. That opens second. We don't use soft close because you'd be sitting there for, 20 seconds waiting for the first one to close, and then you can close the second door. Some people could say that you could do soft close on the second one. At that point, what's the difference? The other one's not soft close. But then there's this plate that goes with it. Now, I believe, obviously this is a big plate. This kind of mimics the plate from the 1/2-inch overlay. It's kind of similar, not the same, but kind of similar. And it also clips in super easily like that. It is relatively nice. I believe it is around 1/2-inch overlay as well for this. And I think I already said it, but if not, it's 170-degree opening. So in that corner where if you put a 1/2-inch overlay on there, you're going to open it and it's going to stop, and you're not even going to be able to access the cabinet. Where these open, and then it gives you that added swing, 170 degrees. So now let's go over some of the screws. Now, these are the screws I use. They're very reliable. Just kidding. That's the actual brand of them, is reliable. There's two different types of screws that I use depending on which hinge we're using. So the first one is a 3/4 inch pan head. Now, first, all of these hinges, to screw them into the actual door, I use these, which they are a 5/8. They are a, what is it? It's an 8 by 5/8. I think I took off the little part of the package that says. I believe they're a number 6 by 5/8. And I can put that down into the description for sure what these are, but they're just a very tiny, it's probably hard to even see. And these are not panhead. These are 5/8 long, and they have like the pointed end so that it kind of sits in the hinge relatively flush. If you can see that. So all of these hinges will use these screws to fasten them into the door. Now, these two hinges, the 1/2-inch overlay and the Susan hinge, will both use these screws also to fasten them to the face frame. Now, the full overlay and 1.25-inch overlay, you'll need to use these, which are a Phillips pan head screw, and they are 3/4 inches long. Now, the actual part where you fasten it through is kind of like inset in there a little bit. It does give you a little slot. And it's also probably a heavy, like 1/8 of an inch thick, maybe between 1/16 to 1/8, which is why I like to use the 3/4 screws, because it kind of gives you a little bit more to fasten into there. Now, that is what I would use to fasten these in. Something I didn't go over is adjustments on these. All of these hinges, when you fasten them into, actually that is false, not the Susan hinge. These three hinges, when you fasten them into the face frame, they all have some sort of slot to them. You can see the slot is right in here, and the slot on this one is right in here. So if you fasten it in there and you end up trying to tweak the door to where they're even, and one door needs to be moved up or down like 1/8 of an inch, you kind of have that ability to, with the hinge, with that slot. I usually use a hand screwdriver for that. Loosen up 3, and then I loosen up the last one and just kind of like tap it down a little bit to get that fine adjustment. But on these full overlay and 1.25-inch overlays, there's really, one of the reasons I'm not the biggest fan of these ones is because they have very minimal adjustments. So you have this screw here, right here on the face. Hoping you can see some of this stuff. And that adjusts it right and left. So if the top of the door needs to come over, bottom needs to go in, or vice versa, that'll give you that adjustment. but you do not have very much room. You only have maybe, what do you have? Like a heavy eighth. Maybe an 1/8 to 3/16 adjustment. What's tough is sometimes I feel like that's not enough to be, I don't know. I just like a little bit more. And then this back screw in the very back, all the way back to the end, that's going to move your door in and out. So if you put your door on and the bottom of your door, right where your handle is, you can push on it and it's kind of like got a little room there. You're going to want to move the top left corner out to move that bottom right corner in. So like I said, it's hard to go over adjustments, just kind of like talking about them. Maybe in the next project when we are installing something, I can go over some of these hinges. Usually on a kitchen, I will use some kitchens I use all 4 of these types on them, from a Susan hinge to mainly full overlay, but there's a few areas where I need to use these just in case, and then up against the wall I use these. So on a full kitchen, I'll be able to go through and show you a good amount of these. But I think that concludes this. Altogether, I really like all of these Blum hinges. These I'm just not the biggest fan of because they don't give me that adjustment, enough of an adjustment, I feel. Because I'm so used to these, which they have a lot of adjustment and a lot of movement. I feel like you have almost like a 1/4 inch either way to be able to go to really move this where you need it to go. Another hinge we didn't touch on was inset hinges. Now, I haven't done inset in a while, or frameless. I believe some of those, especially frameless, you can use this straight shank hinge, but it's just a different plate that you would need to get. There's some different ones that have like a big space here. It's like thicker, and some of those are the plates that you would need for some of that. But altogether, let me know what you guys think. Let me know if you have any questions about these. I'll try to put links in the description to as many of these I can find where I get them. You can't typically purchase there unless you have a business account, so it's not really usable for me to link you guys to there. So I'll find a place that you could pick these up, just straight go on and order. So I'll try to do that, and let me know what you guys think.